Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I have to say that in the last few months, I've been to several conferences about real-world assets of tokenized securities, as they call them in TradFi. And I got to say, the sense of excitement and the sense of urgency around this topic has become increasingly clear, especially for this year. So I'm starting to think that this bold prediction, this is a graph that was actually presented at the World Economic Forum a few years back. And so the prediction was very bold, of 15 trillion by 2030. And I'm starting to believe that this is not actually impossible. However, 2030 is actually pretty close. There's only 6 years to go. So considering that we are now around 10 billion, maybe 100 billion if you consider stable coins, like as a RWA application, definitely important. So the question is, how do we get from this capitalization to 15 trillion? Or in other words, how do we 150x from here? Pretty bold challenge. We believe that one of the biggest issues to get there, or like one of the biggest challenges, is fragmentation. And the solutions, probably the fastest way to get there, is aggregating the best solutions that we see out there. I mean, today we've been like seeing a lot of folks talking about their solution, and we believe that the aggregation of those best practices is actually going to get us there, or at least much closer. However, aggregation means a lot of things for many different people. So today, my goal and my hope is to actually walk you through some of these aggregation strategies and enablers, and let you walk away with a better understanding of all these moving parts, right? So we will talk about the compliance building blocks and how we can aggregate them. Obviously how to stimulate the issuers to bring more assets on chain, to stimulate also new demand for and the buy side for these tokens, which also creates more composable value chains end to end. And it's not just about the technical integration and aggregation, it's also about putting together business models for all of these stakeholders in a more seamless fashion. For those of you who don't know Enzyme, just a quick word. Enzyme is an on-chain asset management protocol which has been around since, before DeFi was even a word, since 2019. It's been securing over like $250 million of assets for different users, and quite frankly has been always at the forefront and trying to be the state of art of asset management on chain. So let's go one by one and all these elements. The building blocks for compliance, we see the most important ones are definitely the decentralized ID systems that are privacy preserving, that are reusable across different applications, so I don't have to do every time like a KYC with every different apps. Compliance is also can be achieved through different means. One of them is compliance at the application level, so applying some whitelisting or gating, what TradFi calls the walled garden, and also at token level, because we also have standards that create additional attributes on top of ERC-20s that give us other policies. Some things are actually better shown that explain, so let's see how this works. With ID system or solution, that can be associated with KYC, and obviously those IDs are then associated with addresses that then can be whitelisted to participate in certain products on chain. That doesn't mean that that has to be the only solution. In fact, we are a big believer in permissionless solutions, and we would never bake in blacklisting at the core level, core protocol level, but definitely this is one of the use cases that people are asking, and therefore this can be customized in such a way. The ID and KYC is not only useful for the investor side, it's also useful for the execution side. One of our users is Signum Bank from Switzerland, and they've asked us, hey, we want to do a product on chain with you guys, but we cannot trade our asset. We cannot trade the assets on Uniswap with unanimous counterparts. We want to make sure that we know who we're trading with. So we aggregated a solution, in this case from 0x, which allows to trade only with, here we have examples of market makers, institutional liquidity providers that can actually guarantee that these trades are AML and travel rule compliant. So this is a solution that can be aggregated there. And we have standards that are emerging, like the ERC 3643, the T-Rex from Tokeny, as an example, which can actually be a wrapper around the portfolio tokens, and that standard can provide additional policies on top of the ERC 20. That means that tokens can have like owner ID, like rules around transferability, recoverability, and auditability. This makes the job of transfer agents, for example, or fund administrator much easier because all of these additional characteristics. Now, switching on to the supply side, how can we actually support the issuers so they can bring more assets on chain? We see three things that are important: the aggregation of tokenization platforms, because there's a lot of them, and they all come from different chains, so it's important to actually put them together. Chainlink was, brilliant today, Sergey, talking about how they can bring NAV data for all these assets on chain, and also how they can bring proof of reserve that shows the solvency of these assets, and the secure cross-chain distribution. Distribution over different chains is also very important. Again, some things better shown than explained. The aggregation here would work with connecting with different tokenization platforms across different chains and getting those prices or reliable NAV, not BAV, and proof of reserves so that we can have data about what the assets are worth on a continuous basis, and also like what the underlying reserves are, and so we avoid issues like the global financial crisis, where we kind of lost track of who owned what and what the assets were worth. This shows also like we are actually working with Chainlink on their CCIP solution in order to create this ability to source assets from different chains and distribute them on any other chain. So essentially, instead of asking investor to go and figure out where to source like 10 different assets from 10 different chains, we can have like an aggregation of all these RWAs and distribute them on any other chain. So we have like a seller blockchain and a buyer blockchain that can be connected seamlessly into this aggregation setup. Right, so the demand side is also very important, because the question is, okay, we're going to bring all these assets on chain, but who's going to buy them, and why are they going to buy them? Okay, so that's a very important question. I heard a lot of talk about this topic today. We think that we see the emergence also of DeFi/TradFi asset managers who actually are going to be very instrumental in creating solutions and creating structured product that are managed on-chain, which actually is going to take away the whole complexity from the investors. Because we cannot ask investors to actually figure out all of this complexity and understand like the risks and do the due diligence and pick every single asset. Managers need to do that, and they need to abstract the complexity away completely for investors. And also, obviously, we need market makers that provide liquidity in the secondary market, and regulated markets themselves, where actually those assets can be traded or used for rebalance. Here again, we talk about some of the asset managers that represent the state of art for on-chain asset management. These guys can create structured product, they can create ETPs on-chain that are actually structurally better, fundamentally better product than what we have in TradFi. I mean, if we just copy and paste what TradFi is producing, then we're not creating any new net demand, probably. But if we start to create new type of portfolios that include different asset classes that can offer better risk-adjusted returns, because maybe like there's like a high level of uncorrelation between these asset classes, then this type of stuff becomes the best opportunity on the market. So when the best opportunity on the market are actually on chain, that's when the demand is going to be like driven on the blockchain technology, and therefore, when demand is there, market maker is going to be, okay, there's a lot of flow here in this market. I want to provide my liquidity because there's a business to be made. And also the abstraction, like having portfolio tokens, which are essentially our ETFs on chain, is very convenient for investor, And they can then choose to, the more crypto native ones will say, okay, I want my token and I want to keep it on my safe, for example. I want to do self-custody in my own setup. But others can say, okay, I have this token that represents this plethora of underlying real-world assets, and I want to, keep it in one of these qualified custodians because that's more convenient for me, or I have an internal policy that actually forces me to do so. So whichever is the choice for the investor, there is a solution for it that can be aggregated. So we start to see how this becomes more and more as a Tetris, like I like to call it, a value chain Tetris, where you have different type of assets tokenized by different platforms that are all priced and guaranteed in terms of reserves by different providers. So that becomes a very frictionless type of infrastructure and combination. On the demand side, we have the same type of thing where things can actually be much more integrated and frictionless for the investors. So there's more demand that comes from that side. And Enzyme, we think our role is not like, as I said earlier, like it's not like to create those tokens. It's more like how can we aggregate all those solutions into a super aggregation infrastructure that allows to create this type of new structure managed product brought by different investors, sourced and distributed across different chains, and that can be used by different type of investors, more crypto native or less crypto native. So this is the type of portfolio that we will see in the future. RWA structured products that include different tokenized securities going from treasury bills, credit funds, commodities, and and the list goes on because there's a bunch of assets that can be tokenized, that can be brought on chain, and that can be managed in in a structured portfolio. The technical aggregation is actually one aspect of this business, of this around this topic. The business model aggregation is also very important because it's also important to orchestrate the business model from different stakeholders, okay? So obviously in this case, blockchain can bring programmatic fee collection that has rules that are encoded in the smart contract, the configuration and setup. Those business models are going to be much more transparent and verifiable on chain, and there's going to be very little friction, very little disputes even between the stakeholders because the dispatching of these revenues can happen very seamlessly. So we kind of see like different stakeholders, and they can all have their own business model on chain, starting with the managers collecting their management fees or performance fees, the issues and the tokenizers that are collect mint and redeem fees for these tokens, the L2 chains, obviously with their sequencers and block space fees, oracles with their dedicated oracles like push price feeds, and then market makers and regulated marketplaces which can collect transaction and spreads and fees, and finally the custodians for at least some of the investors, which can collect fees on the asset under custody. So I think the important message here is that the aggregation can also can bring business for all of these stakeholders together, and I think the combination of the aggregation of them is better than the sum of each individual contributor. So I guess I want to leave you with this question, which is a slightly rhetorical question. So I guess there's a lot of focus in this conversation about having something that is faster and cheaper. But I think one of the issues that we still have is a lot of fragmentation. So probably it is already time to discuss about not just faster and cheaper, but also about how to have full stack aggregated RWA products that can be brought on chain and can live natively on chain in a seamless fashion. I guess this is how we see things. So although the question is slightly rhetorical, I think the answer is not just with us, it's actually in this room with all of you guys, because this is about coming together as an industry and providing different solutions that can be then composed with each other to provide something that is a superior user experience for investors that will bring this space, will supercharge this space and bring us to the next level. So definitely we want to tackle this challenge. We're happy to be in this space. We're happy to tackle this challenge to reach this 15 trillion kind of target in 6 years. And yeah, we invite you to come and join us in this exciting journey. Thank you very much.